Welcome back to Franchise Focus. I'm your host, Lisa Linkowski. I am a certified franchise consultant, and Franchise Focus is all about putting a spotlight on people in the franchise industry. And I'm really delighted today to have with me Steve Beagelman, who is the founder of SMB Franchising and Franchise Advisors. And Steve, welcome to the studio.
Hi, thank you very much, Lisa. Thanks for having me.
No, this is terrific. So Steve, I know you have an incredible history in franchising. So trying to get this all into one small amount is going to be tough for me, but let's start from the beginning. Let's start with how you came into the franchising world and what led up to SMB for you.
So I've been in the franchise world my whole life, Lisa. I've been doing this for over 30 years. I got into it through a family business, actually. So my parents got into the franchise industry in the mid-'80s, franchising a packaging and shipping concept, which started out as one location in Long Island, New York. And we eventually grew it to 130 locations in 17 states. But as a kid growing up, I was in high school at the time, and I just was really interested in franchising. I thought it was a really neat business. So as a junior and senior in high school, I used to go and intern for the vice president of franchise sales that my parents had hired to sell franchises for the business. And I would sit next to him and just watch him meet with potential franchisees. Next thing you know, they were paying a franchise fee and spending $150,000 to open a little packaging and shipping store in their town, and so excited to own their own business and be an entrepreneur. So I thought that was a really neat, way to grow a business. And when I went off to college, I convinced my dad to let me sell franchises at 18 years old, which was not an easy thing to do. But I convinced him. It was a tough conversation. But while I went to college, my friends were, having jobs working at the movie theater or the local restaurant, and I was meeting potential franchisees after class, dressed kind of like I am today in slacks, a dress shirt, and a sport jacket. And I had a briefcase in my car, and I'd go meet potential franchisees at a local store. And although I was 18, it was great. I looked 23 at the time. That's great.
Right.
Not as good as when you get older, but when you're 18, you look 23. It's awesome.
Sure.
And sure enough, I would meet potential franchisees, and I would tell them about the business. And next thing you know, 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later, they'd buy a franchise. And I was selling 2 franchises a month, and life was pretty good. It was great. My friends thought I was a little bit crazy because, I was going to class in slacks and a dress shirt, when my friends were going in shorts and T-shirts to college classes. So while I was a junior in college, I decided I wanted to go in my own business. I thought I knew a lot about business, and I decided to start a food delivery concept. So companies like today, Grubhub and DoorDash and Uber Eats, I actually created that industry back in 1991 before it even existed. So I thought people had a time famine. The husband worked, the wife worked. They came home at the end of the day, too tired to cook. And didn't want to go out to eat. And if you live in the Northeast where I live, November, December, January, it's 32 degrees outside,
Right.
It's 7, 8 o'clock at night. And the last thing you want to do is get in your car, go drive to a restaurant and pick up food if you're too tired to cook. And I looked at these restaurants and said on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday night, their dining rooms were half empty, but they were still paying their rent, they were still paying their cooks, they were still paying their electric bills, so they needed more business. And on a Friday and Saturday night, their tables were all full. But they can handle more volume through the kitchen, but they just didn't have any tables available to seat the people. So I started a food delivery concept for restaurants. We started it off while I was in college in 1991, called Black Tie Express. We delivered in black slacks, a white dress shirt, and a bow tie. We wanted to look good walking into your restaurant to pick up the food, and we wanted to look good coming to the customer's front door. We used the same thermally insulated food bags that Domino's Pizza used. And we used two-way walkie-talkies to communicate with our drivers because they didn't have cell phones.
Right.
So that's how we communicated. And we didn't have GPS. I wish we had GPS back then. Boy, it would have made life so much easier. But we used Hagstra maps to get around. So, we would fax the order over to the restaurant. And
fax the order.
That's exactly
Yes.
right. And our driver would go to, TGI Fridays or Pizzeria Uno or the local Italian, Chinese, Japanese restaurant, get to the restaurant, pick up the order, put it in their thermally insulated food bag, and then look at the fax, which said go deliver to 123 Smith Street in XYZ town. They'd go back to their car, and if it was late at night, they'd use their flashlight and look at the map and try and figure out how to get there.
Wow.
So crazy, but we operated the business, started in 1991, graduated college in 92, and in 1993 I franchised the business. And by 1994, I had grown it to 35 franchise locations, became the second largest company in the country doing it. And we were written up in the New York Times and Entrepreneur Magazine. And, we were just a little bit before our time, clearly. As my kids like to tell me, we could have been Grubhub or DoorDash, Dad. So they remind me that all the time. So I got the opportunity after I got married in 94. I got a call from my largest competitor called Takeout Taxi. And they approached me on acquiring my company. They had received a equity investment in the company prior to that, and one of the first things they wanted to do was acquire our company. And what I realized at 24 at the time was I'd be a lot smarter at 34 and 44 with more knowledge in the franchise industry. And as opposed to fighting my competition, it made more sense to join them, and I did. So they acquired our company in November of 94. As part of the sale, I moved down to Northern Virginia and became their vice president of franchise development for Takeout Taxi. And that springboarded my career in franchising. I went on and grew that brand to over 150 locations nationwide, including deals in Lima, Peru, Santiago, Chile, Dublin, Ireland. I mean, I was 24. I didn't know where some of those places were. So it was a really amazing experience for me. And was down there for 2 years when my contract was up. My wife was from New Jersey and I was from New York, and we kind of missed home a little bit. So had the opportunity to move to Bucks County, where we live now and have lived for the last 20 some odd years, raised our family there, our 2 daughters, and fell in love with the area, built several franchise brands, notably an Italian ice chain called Rita's. I took Rita's Italian Ice to about 350 operating stores, 100 more in development. We sold the company to private equity in 2005. And then went on and built a salad chain called Salad Works, also locally, and then eventually a chain of tanning salons called Hollywood Tans, where I was the CEO. Private equity had bought them and brought me in to run it. In 2009, when I left Hollywood Tans, I really didn't plan on starting a franchise consulting business, which is SMB Franchise Advisors. It just kind of happened. So one thing led to another, and I had somebody approach me, and a franchise attorney, and said, "Hey, Steve, I have this client, they're interested in franchising their business, and could you talk to them?" And I said, "Sure," and I did. And after a couple-hour conversation, they said to me, "Steve, we'd like you to help us franchise our business." And I said, "Well, I can't really do that. I'm not a consultant." They said, "Well, why not? Why don't you help us one day a week and go find 3 or 4 other companies to help?"
Right.
And I said, "Well, I don't know if I'm going to do that long term, but you're a nice guy, and I'll help you do it." He had a tax preparation business that I helped out of Brooklyn, New York. And one thing led to another, and I got another phone call and another phone call and another phone call. And next thing you know, I turned to my wife and I said, "I know I didn't plan this, but I think there's a need for a franchise consulting firm with a real hands-on approach with their clients for franchising their business." And I brought people on board who had worked for me at Rita's and Salad Works and Hollywood Tans. And next thing you know, we have a franchise consulting business. We've worked with over 350 brands over the last 10 years. We're one of the top franchise consulting firms in the country by Entrepreneur Magazine. And it's been an absolute blast. I love what I do. We're passionate about helping entrepreneurs fulfill their dream and expand their business through franchising.
All right, you take a breath now.
Yeah, sorry.
Wow.
It's a long story.
No,
Been
listen.
doing it a long time.
Do you understand why I'm so delighted to have my guest here with me today? You want to talk about an expert in this industry. I mean, from your early high school age all the way through to building an incredible business for yourself in an area that was needed simply because you had so much experience that people said, "Hey, can you do this?" And you're like, "I don't know, can I?" Which is, as business owners, that's kind of how we do things, right? You just kind of figure it out. You go, "Yeah, I'll do it, sure." Incredible. I mean, just incredible. And so you now are one of the largest companies that franchise businesses out there today. And explain what that means to people, because I get asked this all the time. I get asked, Lisa, my friend or my cousin or my coworker or whoever, they have this concept, it's a restaurant or it's something in the health and wellness or it's whatever. Can you help me franchise that? And I go, no, but I know someone that can. This guy right here. So explain for the audience, what does that mean? When do you know? When's that light bulb that comes off to say, yeah, I think that this is something that can go across the country?
Yeah, we talk to people every day, Lisa, that are interested in franchising their business. And a lot of times we tell them, you're not ready. And that's okay. Sometimes we give them ideas, we explain to them what things they need to put in place to then be ready a year from now or 2 years from now or 3 years from now. But the things that we look for are positive sales trends. Obviously, if your business is declining in sales, not the right time to franchise, right? If business has been growing each and every year, that's a good sign. If you've extricated yourself out of the day-to-day operations of the business, so you're not working in the business every single minute of every single day. Right. So when somebody tells me they're interested in franchising their business, and I say, okay, let's set up a conference call for Tuesday at 2 o'clock or Thursday at 10 o'clock, oh no, I gotta work my shifts. Okay, how about Monday? Oh no, I gotta be in the restaurant. Well, if you're too busy to talk to me for an hour, you're definitely not ready to franchise your business, right? So those are some telling signs to us, myself and my team, that somebody may not be ready to franchise their business. When we talk to them about key team members that can help in the franchise process, do you have some key people that can really help educate and train your new franchisees? It's so important to get those first franchisees successful to catapult you to become a successful franchise brand. Because without successful franchisees, it doesn't matter if you try and franchise or not, right? Yeah. It's not going to be successful.
Got nothing.
So,
sure. Yeah. So you'll sit there and you have a questionnaire, right? I think it's a pretty in-depth. How many questions?
Yeah, I mean, we go through a whole assessment with a brand to find out whether they're really ready to franchise. Through the process with myself or our director of business development, we'll talk to the potential franchisor about the processes they have in place, their sales trends, their revenues, their expenses, their team members, how long they've been in business, and it's also the category too, right? Some categories are extremely exciting in franchising, and other categories just may not get the legs for franchising. And listen, sometimes I tell people, there's nothing wrong with being a very, very successful brand locally in your market.
Sure.
And just owning that market. I had a conversation with somebody in Orlando, Florida, and I said, listen, you have a great brand. There's nothing wrong with going from 3 locations to 5 or 7 or 10 just in your market and being tremendously successful. Because when you franchise your business, you're going to give up some control to a franchisee. It's still your brand, okay? So you own that brand. When somebody gets a franchise for McDonald's, they don't own the trademark for McDonald's. McDonald's owns the trademark. They're getting a license to use that mark in that community and operate the business. But you have to understand that franchisees are going to operate the business. They're going to hire employees. They're going to work for them. They don't work for you as the franchisor. You're going to train the franchisor how to run the business, and then they train the employees to run the business, right? So you have to give up some control. You have to be okay with that. And if you are, and you have the right training mechanisms in place, you'll have successful franchisees, which will help you grow your franchise brand.
What a great place to take a break. We've lost some control in the fact that we have to go to commercial. And here is a word from our sponsors on the other side. We're going to keep this great conversation going, Steve.
Thanks, Lisa.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. my human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. But it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, she's putting them in the same basket again. It's like, hello, that's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
And welcome back to Franchise Focus. I am your host, Lisa Lankowski, and I'm here today with Steve Beagelman, who is the founder of SMB Franchise Advisors. And we were just talking about that when you franchise a business, that there's some control that you've got to give up and what that involves. So let's talk about, do you have one or two clients that you've helped to franchise that you want to talk about that and what that was like for them?
Sure, Lisa. Every client's different, certainly. And we have clients in every industry, whether it's the pet industry or the food industry or fitness or childcare, senior care. I mean, you name it. We've done, I don't even know how many industries. I think there's about 70 some odd industries in franchising, and we've probably done close to 50 or 60 of them. But a couple clients in particular that I could tell you stories about. So one client is in the fitness industry. It's a mobile personal trainer that comes to your house called Gym Guys. And when I first met Josh York, we talked, and Josh said, I want to franchise my business, and we talked about it, and we decided that, Josh, you're just not ready yet. You're still working too much in your business, not enough on your business. And so Josh said, what are the things that I need to do? We spent a couple hours together and gave him a list of things to work on, and about a year and a half later, he called me up and said, Steve, do you remember me? I'm Josh York from Gym Guys. And I said, absolutely, Josh. I'm from Long Island, too, and you're probably the only guy I know that talks faster than I do. So I said, absolutely, I remember you. And so he said, Steve, I did everything you told me. I want to franchise my business now. And I said, okay, let's go through it. We did. And I said, yeah, now you're ready to franchise. We helped Josh franchise his business. Today he's in about 240 markets across the country. He started at his parents' kitchen table. And I mean, one of the greatest stories ever is when Josh franchised his business, shortly thereafter, maybe it was 3 or 6 months, his wife asked him to go on a vacation. They were, recently married a year or two earlier. And Josh said, we can't go on vacation. I just started this franchise, and I don't have any franchisees yet, and we don't have the money. And he called me up, and he says, what do I do? I said, Josh, you need to go on vacation. If your wife wants to go on vacation, you need to go. So they go on vacation to Cabo, and total true story. While he's on vacation, they met this older couple, and they're just talking a little bit, and one thing led to another, and Josh is online at the buffet, and he has like 6 brownies on his plate because he's a brownie nut, even though he's a fitness nut. He said that's his one vice in life. And the guy said, you can eat all those brownies? And Josh said, yeah. And he said, by the way, what business are you in? And what do you do for a living? And he says, I own a fitness franchise. And he said, tell me about it. And he did. And he said, my son would be really good at that. He works for ESPN, and he wants to transition and own his own business. One thing led to another. Josh got his iPad from the hotel room, did his little PowerPoint Discovery Day presentation that we prepared for him, came back. A week later, we met in a snowstorm, literally, total true story. So I drove from Bucks County, Pennsylvania, Josh from Long Island, and Alan and his son from Westchester, New York. We met in a hotel in Bergen County, New Jersey, and showed him the van, showed him all the equipment. Next thing you know, they became his first franchisee, most successful franchisee, and 240 franchises later, right? So you get your first franchise from going on vacation to Cabo. Great story, and love talking about that.
So how much time from the first time that Josh talked to you about franchising to the time that franchisee got up and running, what would you say?
So from the time we started the process, when we said, okay, now you're ready to franchise, until Josh was up and running, we typically say it takes about 3 to 6 months to get your legal documents complete, the franchise disclosure document with the attorneys that we work with, and get you up and running. But the whole process will take about 8 to 10 months to get your operations manuals complete, the sales processes, everything that goes on the website, and really educate you fully on franchising. But you can start awarding franchises typically in that 3 to 6 months in non-registration states for most franchise brands. And we did that with Josh. So, you know, just a great story. So,
and you worked with Canine Resorts as well, right?
Canine Resorts, another great story. So Stephen and Jason Parker, the founders, are two tremendous individuals. I met Stephen and Jason probably 9 or 10 years ago now when we first started the franchise consulting business. And I went up and met them. I'm a dog lover. I have 2 golden doodles. And they told me they had a luxury hotel for dogs. And I said, you mean a kennel? And they said, no, it's a luxury hotel like a Ritz-Carlton. I said, well, I need to come and see this. And I did. And I was pretty impressed. And that was 10 years ago. Today, the resorts are, oh my gosh, even amazingly nicer. But Stephen was, I think, 23 at the time or 24. Jason was 20 years old. I mean, young entrepreneurs. And we helped them franchise, and they were probably struggling in the beginning. You know, tremendously successful. Today, we've grown the business now, and they've done an amazing job building this business to over 75 franchises across the U.S. What an investment level for the first franchisee was probably $700,000 or $800,000. Now is almost $1.5 million to $2 million to open. They have, some of the resorts have indoor swimming pools and flat plasma TVs for the dogs to watch Animal Planet. They play in daycare with their friends, and you know, what an amazing story of 2 young entrepreneurs. I think at the time, Jason was the youngest franchisor in the country, so at 20 years old. So, you know, we love helping entrepreneurs like that and having stories like that and tremendous, you know, success for our franchisor, you know, clients. And they really are our family. I mean, we say that all the time. You know, we make the joke that it's all about the relationship. And once you get into the family, you can't get out. So.
Once you're in, you're in. Yeah,
yep, that's kind of our joke.
That is the beauty of franchising, that you get this great concept and you light a match to it, and it just can spread across.
Absolutely.
And it is incredible, you know, that there is, I think it's 60 or 70 industries, and there's something like 750,000 franchise units across the country, and employs 8 million people. I mean, the breadth of it is staggering. But not everything flies off. Not everything. Some things fizzle. What are the mistakes that you see when things just collapse and go?
I think some of the challenges are, you know, franchisors need to understand that they're in a whole new business, okay? And sometimes when we see people franchise their business and then it fizzles out a little bit, it could be because the franchisor gets into the franchising business but doesn't really realize that they're in a whole new business of supporting franchisees. You know, one of my clients that was in the junk business, you know, had said to me, he had 15 or 20 trucks, so we helped him franchise. And he said, you know what my goal is one day, Steve? I said, what's that? He said, I want to have 1,000 trucks, but I don't want to own any of them. I want to just be a franchisor. So he understood what the franchising model was. It was about supporting franchisees. Now, that's not to say you can't have corporate units. There are plenty of very, very successful franchisors that have a corporate strategy as well. But you do need to understand that you're out there to support your franchisees. They're paying you a royalty on their sales for a reason, and that's to support them and to help grow the brand, right? Your responsibility is to protect the integrity of the brand and to grow the brand and help them evolve their concept. Their responsibility as franchisees is to operate the units successfully in their communities, right? So I think some of the challenges with some franchisors who may not become successful are they can't make that transition.
Right.
You know, of being a franchisor from operating 2 units themselves or 3 units themselves or 1 unit themselves. And that sometimes is a challenge for people.
Yeah, excellent advice. And you've got to, just like when I'm talking with my candidates about, well, yeah, you're going to either be successful or you're not. It's on you.
It is.
And
it is on them.
It's on them, and that's
it.
And if they think it's easy and they think it's not going to be a challenge and everything's been handed to you, and you know, I would watch when I had my franchise, you know, I'd watch people that just kind of sat at home and they wouldn't get up and go, and so you have that mentality. So you have the same mentality in the franchisor side where they're just not understanding to let go and let things happen and keep helping to grow it.
Exactly.
That's what the issue is. Okay.
And franchising's, it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. We tell people that. When people call us up and say, I want to have, 500 units in the first year, I mean, they'll crash and burn. So,
right.
That's not the kind of client that we want to take on because, we know they can't support that and they can't sustain that. So for us, we want them to have good growth, smart growth, and support the franchisees to become successful for the long term, and then hopefully have a private equity exit. And a lot of our clients have done that, which is very, very exciting for them and for us.
Sure, and you know what? That leads me to a question I had before, is that you help with investing to get the franchisors going? Like, how does that work?
So most of our clients come to us where they self-fund to franchise their business. However, some of them do come to us and say, we want to put together a group of investors. Typically, they're angel investors early on in franchising the business. But then eventually, when brands grow, and we just did this with Canine Resorts and a few other brands, we'll bring in a private equity firm to invest in the company. And sometimes they'll take a majority stake, sometimes they'll take a minority stake in the business. And yes, I've helped several of our clients do private equity transactions. We have a dry cleaning brand up in New England called Lapel's Dry Cleaning that we helped do a private equity transaction. And then just recently, Lapel's acquired companies, the competitors of theirs, that were 3 times their size. And they went from 100 franchisees to over 500. So pretty exciting. So sometimes when you do a private equity transaction, it gives you the capital and the equity partner to really help catapult your growth much faster than you could do on your own.
Well, Steve, you'll never believe it, but our time is up. If you can it's just crazy. I'm going to have you back because there's so much more to talk about. Steve is a writer for Forbes magazine, by the way. He does speaking at conference engagements. He is the expert. So having you here with me today is fantastic. We also have the International Franchise Expo coming up next week.
Yep.
You'll be there.
I will.
You have a booth, pavilion.
We have the SMB Franchise Advisors pavilion where many of our clients will be exhibiting. We'll be there in booth 433, I think is our booth number. I'll be speaking on Friday, and I'll look forward to seeing you there, Lisa, as well.
I can't wait. I thank you so much for having, the time to come here and be with us today and educate everyone about a different side of franchising, which is taking that concept and setting it across the country. And this is Franchise Focus. I am your host, Lisa Lankowski. I am a franchise consultant. You can find out everything about me at milestonefranchising.com. And Franchise Focus airs every Friday at 1 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, and we thank you for tuning in.